look up. But so let's talk about networking, the gift that keeps on giving. Adrian doesn't usually need an introduction because I feel like everybody knows you, but I will say I think it's been really cool to see the newest part of your chapter in multifamily, which is your Multifamily X consulting group, which has many layers to it. And I'll let you kind of talk about the different divisions within that. But for those that for those of you that don't know, that he actually started way back in the day, 20 years ago, as a part-time groundskeeper. And look at him today. I mean, he's obviously seriously passionate about maintenance, but he's also passionate, I would say, about disrupting the norm. I think that's fair to say, about maybe doing things a little unconventionally and not how everyone else is doing it. And I think that's part of how his brand and his LinkedIn presence has grown so exponentially, is that you're really kind of doing it your own way. And so I think if you can give everyone just kind of a brief introduction on you, and then we'll open the floor to questions, because I want to make sure people get a chance to talk to you. And fun fact, if you don't know this, you used to be a lawyer. And that was one of the craziest, like, eye-opening, that you were a lawyer in Romania, right? Yeah, okay.
The bar exam, but never practiced as a lawyer. I could have, because I passed the bar exam. Never had the opportunity. Yeah, but I did.
So I will give you the floor and then we'll open it up to questions, but I'm very excited for you to be here. And this call is recorded for people who couldn't make it, but take it away, Mr. Adrian.
How long do I have? Like, do I have
30 minutes, man?
30 minutes, you got it. Okay. So as Tara said, I'm originally from Romania. I've been there since I've been here in the United States since 2003. Came in a country not knowing much of English. Like I could tell you the words that I wouldn't like do in a public setting, right? Those are the only words that I knew at the time. So being a legal counselor, a law school graduate, like that was a totally different thing. So I came over here. A friend of mine one day told me I was looking for a full-time job. I wanted to get $10 an hour and a full-time job. The friend of mine said, hey, there's some job openings, groundskeeper job openings at Georgia Tech. So I went ahead and I applied, but nobody called. But then the groundskeeper work stuck with me. So I went back online and I started applying for all the groundskeeper jobs that I could find in the Atlanta area. Finally got a part-time job at apartment community, turned into a full-time, and then the story went on. So for 20 years, I've been around. I stepped out for about a year, and I went on a vendor site for a company that provides maintenance services for single and multifamily operators. Then came back into multifamily early this year, and I got laid off twice this year. Second time I got laid off, I decided that I'm gonna go work for myself. So about 2.5 months ago, I started building Multifamily X Consulting, short for that, Multifamily X, right? It's really easy to remember that. So I'm having a ball. Like I get up at 3-4 o'clock in the morning. I work until 8-9 o'clock at night, and nobody's really pushing me to do that. I'm just excited. Like I get up, I'm excited, and it's a hell of a journey, right? I wouldn't change this for anything. So Multifamily X, a few things about Multifamily X, right? So I'm trying to build like 12 different verticals, fractional maintenance services, consulting for property management companies, consulting for vendors, consulting for prop tech companies, consulting for industry professionals, like career coaching. And I'm also building a media company, right? It's probably like such a grandiose, plan to hear. I'm a one-man media company, right? So I started the second podcast this week. Tara just mentioned that we had a hiccup. The invite that I sent to our guest was he's supposed to start at the time when we were supposed to finishing the episodes. So he had no clue that he's supposed to be on for 30 minutes. We got a hold of him. We started 30 minutes late. We made up for it. I think we had a great first episode, and we're going to do those live episodes every single Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. By the way, if you're around next Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to have a Savannah Wheeler, the CEO of Apartment Snapshot. What we're doing over there is we're inviting executives in the industry to share their wisdom. They're individuals that typically you can't reach out to in person. Like they're not, they're out of reach, like they're executives. They do their executive thing, right? So we bring them on for an hour. We have them share their wisdom. We take questions from the audience. We give all of you the opportunity to ask questions and to actually get access to those executives for an hour of that particular day. And then we also look for rising stars in the industry, people that are doing amazing jobs where they at. They just don't have a national presence. So we want to elevate those individuals, help them get on a national stage. Hopefully we're able to do that. I do this with a co-host. It's not on my own. So I'm doing with Neda Urias. She's a amazing individual professional. She started her entrepreneurial journey about the same time as I did. So we have a little flexibility right now in our schedules. We make our own schedules so we could show up every Thursday at 3 p.m. and meeting with you all and hopefully providing value to you all. I also have a podcast that I started 2 years ago. You see it, it's right there in my background, right? I'm 93 episodes in and counting. I'm recording between this week and next week, like 3 more, so stay tuned. And this week, I'm starting recording episodes for my third podcast, Multifamily X podcast. That's gonna have like 8 different subcategories of podcasts. So wherever you are in the industry, you're gonna find a podcast that it's for you, right? Whether you're a leasing individual, a leader, or you want to look at leaders, what they have to say to share, whether you're a maintenance person or marketing or a vendor or a prop tech company or an HR or a recruiter, that's going to be the place for you. So we're trying to build so much content, like a library of content with wisdom from the best in an industry. That's going to be Multifamily X podcast. Why am I doing this? I think that events like the one we're part of today are amazing. And it's amazing that Tara records this and is going to put it out to the world for those that couldn't join us in person today to hear and listen to. But also, we do not enough of this, right? Typically, it's the industry events, the conferences. A small fraction of multifamily folks participate to industry conferences for many reasons, right? Financial reasons, time reasons. So most people are out of this circuit of conferences. Okay, well, we want to bring people that go to conferences and leadership to their homes, to them. They could, pick up their phone and listen to a conversation or watch that conversation. There's a void. It's not enough public conversation in our space. And without having those conversations, we can expect for things to advance, to bring us to 2023, 2024, and to the future without having those real conversations. And one of the ways, right, besides just in-person conversations, is to create environments, create platforms like I am trying to create to bring people on and just to blast this content to the public out there that otherwise wouldn't have access to those individuals and their wisdom.
You're basically like the Oprah of multifamily.
I am.
I mean,
actually,
right?
I should have brought my wig, my Oprah wig with me. I promise next time you invite me, I'm going to have my Oprah wig with me. I'm going to wear it.
I mean, you're basically talking about like this empire, these shows, your mission, like it's you are the Oprah of multifamily. We're gonna say it today. Adrian is the new Oprah of multifamily. I'm coining that. So
it's very interesting that you're saying that because a couple of years ago, one of my bosses, like a really big boss of the company I was working for, introduced me to some investors as the networking king. And then he paused and said, or queen. So I'm not sure what he meant by that, but he did say it in front of the investors. So I take I take the Oprah. I don't feel like a queen, but Oprah all day long.
Well, I love what Kendra just put. You get a podcast. You get a podcast.
Exactly. You're all invited to my podcast now.
I love that. So I have a bunch of questions, but I don't want to take over. So what I want to do is give you guys the floor first because I want to make sure because I get to talk to Adrian all the time. Um, and that's one of the best things about him is even though he wakes up at 3:30 in the morning and doesn't sleep and is doing 47 shows, he still makes time for people. He makes time for anybody. It doesn't matter how long he's known you and he's super genuine. And by that, for anyone that's listening to this who's looking for a mentor, he has agreed, I don't know how, that he has the bandwidth to take on somebody as a mentee. It does not have to be someone in maintenance. So please don't think that that's the only thing that he's good at. He's good at a variety of things. That's why he has a variety of shows. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But I'd love to just, if you want to just raise your hand. Whoever wants to kick off question first, or I can start, but I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to talk to Adrian today and fire away that burning question you've always wanted to ask Oprah. I mean, Adrian.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Yeah. I'm waiting for someone to see if they have one. If not, I'll jump in. But does anyone want to ask a burning question or do you want me to just go?
Hey, let's go ahead and kick it off. And I think we have the hand raising thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna look for hands that are raised, and we take questions from anyone and everyone. No problem.
Okay. So what I will say to just kind of kick it off is you've got 20 years in multifamily, starting off as a groundskeeper. One of the things that we talk about, Adrian and I have done a lot of maintenance roundtables in the past, and we're talking about recruiting, not just recruiting maintenance professionals, but as you all know, most of us got into multifamily by accident. We all have like that fun story. And we're not, one of the things that he's really good at is shaking up like the traditional recruiting techniques. And one thing I'll say that I think, Adrian, if you can kind of like give some insight on how to be comfortable with recruiting outside of our industry. I've seen in years past, I do it, not everybody's comfortable with it, but like recruiting your Uber driver, the guy that's helping you at the airport, the person who's helping you, getting your coffee at the gas station. In the spirit of networking, is there some advice you can give to this group and anyone that's listening on how to be more comfortable with like recruiting others into our industry just in casual conversation?
Well, first of all, you have to believe that this is the place to be, right? Like if you're not believing in a mission, like if you're not happy where you're at, I don't think that you could be an ambassador for the industry. I mean, honestly, why would you bring someone to the same place where you feel miserable, right? And it's just kind of like a 9 to 5 or something that sucks. It's part of your life that is not great. So first of all, I don't think that I speak to those individuals. Like they have many questions to figure out on their own. But for those of you here that are passionate about being in an industry, I think this is kind of a natural thing, right? And even though it might not come natural for you to be the outgoing person to start to kick off conversations, I think that it's a challenge that I challenge you to take this, because believe it or not, I'm not an extrovert. I don't feel like I'm an extrovert. So I go out of my way to initiate conversations, to connect with people. And actually, one of the reasons why I started my first podcast was because I wanted to put myself in uncomfortable situations, like talking to someone knowing that other people will watch that conversation. Because the more of that I do, I think that hopefully, right, I'm hoping the better I'll get at it. So make yourself uncomfortable. And this goes for anything in life. But make yourself uncomfortable, initiate a conversation with someone, share them great stories about your journey in multifamily. And you never know. I had a young lady not too long ago, actually, the day of our networking event, Tara, at NAA. She was a bartender. She was serving at a bar right there. And I told her, first of all, I told her about LinkedIn. I asked her about LinkedIn. She didn't know, right? She didn't know about the platform. So I pull out my phone. I show it to her. I show her the app. I told her what LinkedIn is about, and I encouraged her to create an account. And I said, when you create an account, make sure that you connect with me. Like, this is me. So I put my profile. I said, take a picture of this. When you decide to be on LinkedIn, like, connect with me. And she had amazing customer service skills. I told her, like, look, you could make a killing in leasing apartments. Not to say that this is not maybe a great job for you, but I'm telling you, like, if you ever decide to make a change, and you could do this anywhere in this country, it doesn't have to be in Atlanta, it could be in Florida, it could be in Hawaii, you could pick your place and just like go places, see places, live at a property for a discount and make a killing, make a lot of money. Like, this could be for you. I'm not sure if she took that to heart or not, but I felt compelled to do that because I saw so much potential in her. And I know that someone like her, if that switch is getting flipped one day and she decides to be in a multifamily, she's gonna be a superstar.
I love that. One of the things that people, and it was funny because we kind of were joking, but not last week when we were at Optech, I was telling somebody, I was like, yeah, and Adrian has like, I don't know, 26,000 followers or something. And you're like, actually, I'm like a little over 28,000 followers on LinkedIn. And I think we laughed about it, right? Because it's astounding to me how you have built a personal brand. Each one of us is building a personal brand, whether you are intending to or not, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever that looks like. Each one of us is building a personal brand. How would you, like, what advice would you give to people in our industry who have a LinkedIn profile? I think it can be overwhelming to think like, how do I get from 500 followers to 28,000? But what would you kind of say has been like your like the sweet spot, the ticket to get you such engagement and the followers that you have today?
Over a decade of working a part-time job, thousands of hours of engagement. There's no secret to this. The way you get from 500 to be specific to answering your question, the way you get to from 500 to 10,000, you got to get to 501 first, and then to 502 and to 503. It's one at a time. It's not a jump. It's hard to, like, if you imagine that there's magic, for me, it wasn't. Maybe other people have a better way, maybe they know the hacks, how everybody likes to say, hacks. I don't have any hack. For me, it's been thousands of hours of really a lot of behind the scenes stuff that you do not see, like personal messages, DMs, maybe helping someone that needed something that wasn't visible on a platform in my feed. That's how I build my thing. And I make the first step. I don't expect that people will reach out and connect. I go to my list every single week. You get a 100 invites. You could invite 100 people. When you go to your profile out there's like two people together. There's an icon on top. You click on that, and that's gonna give you certain people from your circle, whether it's the area that you live in, or the industry that you're in, or hashtags that you're following. And you pick all of those people and you send them invites. And again, you could do like up to 100 a week. If you do that every week, you could have potentially 400 new connections every month. And while you're doing that, when someone reaches out and say he's great connecting with you, don't ignore them, right? Like, of course, we all get like 1,000 probably of cold messages trying to sell. Someone tried to say that he's gonna help me with my dentistry practice, and and my answer was, I don't do this. I don't dentistry, bro. That's exactly why I responded to him. But outside of that, people that genuinely want to connect, and you could tell by the way they word their messages, my suggestion is to not ignore them. Like, start a connection, start some report out there. And there's a lot of people that need help. There's a lot of people that feel lonely. We're extremely fortunate that we're here in this setting today, and we have others to look out for us, to go to. Realize, please, that most people don't. And that's the person that you could become, just helping others without expecting anything in return. Not a transactional type of thing, not reaching out because you need something in return. Literally just putting yourself out there and give more than you take. I think this is very important. I think people notice. And if you're becoming a genuine person that, that way, I think this is gonna help you naturally, like organically, if you want grow your network. And people will notice when you do that. And they also will know when you're genuine or not.
They will. And Paul, I see your hand up. I'll give you the floor in one sec, but the one thing I will, just to underscore what you just said, people tease me, but on LinkedIn, my middle name is Networking Takes Work. The key part of network in the word is work. And so to your point, Adrian, there's not a magic secret sauce. It's devotion and time. It's another job, but it's about the genuine connection. So thank you for sharing that. Paul, why don't you take the floor, my friend?
Howdy. Hey, Adrian, I'll see you soon again. But
Hey, soon, my friend.
Today's question for you, when you're networking and putting yourself in these awkward situations, is there a common theme or obstruction that people think that the apartment industry is, and why they would not be interested in coming to multifamily? Is there a common thread that you hear on a regular basis? Granted, I'm asking from a maintenance standpoint because of being selfish, but even beyond that, as an industry as a whole, is there a commonality that you hear?
Yeah, I think that the commonality that I hear is that they don't even realize that there's such an industry. Like, it's such a thing as having a career in multifamily. Of course, they know the apartments exist. Of course, they know that, rental places exist. Of course, they imagine that they gotta be maintained and everything. They're not thinking much of it because honestly, we as an industry, we're not amazing at advertising this outside of our industry. The thing that kills me is if you're in a boardroom, the question that you hear most often is, what is everybody else doing? When people have their meetings at corporate meetings, right, and they're discussing marketing or whatever, occupancy, the question one person at least every meeting is going to ask, what is everybody else doing? Like, what is the next competitor doing? Instead just saying, what can we do different, right? So if we always going to be recirculating the same ideas without actually trying to go outside, out of our way, out of our industry, out of our place, our common place, to get the word, to preach the gospel of multifamily, we can't really expect that people all of a sudden will just know. And I'm going to make a parallel here, right? How many of you, by the show of hands, think that a product like Nike sells itself? No one. Because that's not true. They're spending tens of billions of dollars every year to be in your face every day. The same with Coca-Cola, the same with with Apple. We could take a fraction of that. And we could do that without a lot of resources. We just need passionate people to get together and go to high schools and present those kids out there. The opportunities that we have in multifamily is not that big of a deal. You don't need so many resources. You just donate a few hours of your time. Take a few industry leaders, take them to the 10th graders and explain the 10th graders what are some alternatives to go into college. Do that constantly, long enough, and you're going to see that this paradigm is shifting. So 20 years later, I'm not talking about how I fell into the industry by accident, just like most of us here on a call. If we want to see different results, we're gonna have to start acting differently. And these are some ways. Everybody that's here on a call, they took time out of their day. They must be passionate about something about multifamily. I think this should be starting with us. Instead, like waiting for some initiative or some NAA or whatever A to start this, like it should start with us. You don't have to wait for seats at the table being created. You build your own table. People will rally because this is a great cause. Just get everybody and people will just follow because they love to be part of something bigger than themselves. And this is definitely something bigger that we could make a mark for the future.
I love that. What is the question that you, so like, I'll just talk about OpTech because many of us were there. It's a conference. People are sometimes overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, it's big. I don't know how to network, being uncomfortable, pushing yourself. What would you say is the most common question people ask you when they meet you?
This is gonna sound like, self, how do you say, just the bragging. But the most common thing that I get is that, hi, it's really nice to meet you in person. I've been following you on LinkedIn I just wanted to say hi, just wanted to meet you in person. By the way, that makes my day every single time. But in reality, that's truly the reality. Like people that I never met in person, that are coming to me. And of course, when you have like as many followers or network members, you're not gonna know. I'm not gonna know 28,000 people. I barely know a fraction of those people, right? It's based on how often I interact with those individuals that I remember their names, who they are, and so on and so forth. But for the most part, I don't know the rest of them. Like the overwhelming majority of them, I don't know. I just think that people are craving genuine in-person interaction. And if you want to be that person to walk up to someone that's very well known in the industry, don't think that they're gonna take this the wrong way. Just take that step and just go up to them and say, hey, I know you're Mike Brewer. I know you, Mike. I just wanted to say hi. I'm Adrian from Atlanta. It's very nice to meet you in person. Like, take that first step. You'll be surprised what could come out of that. What type of conversations. Don't sell yourself short and say, hey, this is not for me. This is not my thing. The self-imposed imposed limitations are killing more dreams than any other external factors are. Just the things that are in our head. I can't do this. This is not for me. This is how I was taught in school. All those things that we grew up with, and we create all those barriers for ourselves, and we're limiting ourselves from growing. Like, just go out there, go crazy one time, and just go up to like 5 people and just say hi to them, introduce yourself to them. And if you do that enough times, I promise you that your life is gonna be different in so many ways, better ways.
I think that that is fabulous advice. And I know sometimes one of the easiest ways, in my opinion, that's great advice, but sometimes when you go to try and execute it, you trip over yourself, right? You get in your head, you're like, oh, I remember Adrian gave me this great advice, but I feel stuck. And one of the best things, and we've talked about this on past calls, is if you find somebody at a lunch table or sitting somewhere in an event space and they're by themselves, go to that one person. That's sometimes the easiest way. Like you said, don't go to try and get from 500 to 28,000, go to 501. So to me, networking is about one connection at a time. It's something that I preach. You and I share that in common. And I feel like that's where a lot of people get tripped up, is they just don't know how to take that first step. And if you focus on the small, like you've talked about, that can be less intimidating and less overwhelming. And it allows you to make a genuine connection, because if you're sitting and talking to just one person and you have a solid conversation, that's a solid new connection. That's not just a number. And so if you can at least just introduce yourself to one person and take that small bite, I think that's where you can eventually get to that 28,000. And 28,000 doesn't have to be your goal. It could be 1,000. It could be just, something small. I know you have a hard stop coming up. Does anyone have a question before he jumps off, or before I give him a few more minutes to kind of close out?
I just want to know, with all this good preaching, are you passing the plate?
Or pass the hat or something, right? It's church. Woo.
Uh, I don't think that I'm understanding your question, Paul.
Donations.
Donations? Oh, okay. Yes. Yes, for sure.
Can we quickly take a group photo for those who feel comfortable jumping off or jumping back on camera? I love to take a group photo because we've got royalty in the house. All right, ready? Okay, one. Tyler, are you driving or passenger? 1, 2,
Driving, but
3.
safely.
Okay, good. Adrian, we've got 2 minutes. What is something that is not on your LinkedIn profile, not on your resume, that you want people to know about you?
That's an amazing question. I'm a pretty open book. I should say that, what you see is what you get. People, they get to know me in person. They know that I'm not a fake. I don't build a fake persona on LinkedIn. I'm not trying to pretend to be who I'm not. It's a hard question, Tara. I haven't gotten a question as hard in a long time. What is it that very hard question.
Adrian, I have to say, I actually didn't know about the bar. That was one maybe most people don't know.
I tell the story fairly often. Of course, that's not on my LinkedIn profile. Well,
No.
I graduated over law school. If you look at my education, so you could see that over there. It's not that I was a lawyer, right? So you can see that. Probably that would be one thing.
You flip houses, you're a family man, you're a father, you're a husband. I think one of the things that I think, just to sum up, is like, and I can attest to this, you guys know that Adrian and I will do we haven't done one in a while, but we do our walk and talks. Like the Adrian you see online and on this call is exactly who you're going to get in person. And I know many of us on this call can attest to that. And I think that anyone who may have been intimidated to reach out to you because you're somewhat of an icon in our industry and you've got a lot of followers, I think this helps humanize, and that the next time they see you, you're going to find him at the airport. He's always in some Delta terminal somewhere, right? And I think that's, the fact that he is willing to open himself up for mentorship to anybody in this group is a testament that even though he's opening an empire and being the next Oprah, that he still takes time for others. So we appreciate you. I appreciate you being on this call. I think we need to do a follow-up on this session since there was a broken link and since you have a hard stop.
I would love to do that, Tara, with you as soon as you want me to. I'd love to come back. Thank you all for bearing with me. I know it's been it's been a preachy episode, right? It's been a preachy episode, but I can't help myself. I'm very passionate about these topics, so I just can't help myself. That's just who I am. Thank you so much all for being here all today, for taking the time to be here. I appreciate you all.
And I can stay on for a few minutes if some of the latecomers want to stay on.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of Multifamily X Podcasts, the maintenance series, Masters of Multifamily Maintenance Conversations. This podcast is brought to you. It's powered by AppWork. We want to thank our partners from AppWork for helping us making this happen. With that being said, I want to introduce our extraordinary guest today, Mark Kukro. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you very much, Adrian. I just appreciate you having me on here and allowing us to have a conversation for people in the industry to listen to or listen and watch. And I'm excited. I can't wait to get the conversation started.
Mark is the president for Plus One Consulting. Mark, tell us a little bit about your business. Tell us a little bit about yourself for those in the audience that don't know you that well.
Sure. So like many people, I'm sure some listening, I started off in the field as a technician, actually a groundskeeper. I was an HVAC contractor before. And I moved to North Carolina. I wound up getting a groundskeeper job, became a technician, 1, 2, 3. I moved my way up to a supervisor, a regional, and then a national role. And I was in charge of the service team development. So a lot of the training and the projects and the overall operations, policies, procedures for that. And, you know, in this industry, you wear a lot of hats when you have a role. And so I had a lot of hats. And then about 20 years ago, actually 20 years this year, I went out on my own and I started service team training. And I've been a speaker and a consultant for the industry for 20 years. And I also started maintenancevideos.com for training. And so I'm starting to put content out. And in addition to that, this year, 3 months ago, I bought land and I'm building a commercial building. And so I know what it's like in the field. I know what it's like to have properties and rent them and now build them. But, you know, we're always learning in this industry. And then on the personal side, my wife and I have been together almost 30 years, married 24. We have twins, and I just have a very blessed and very fortunate to travel around and do what I do and have wonderful people in my life.
Mark, I can't help but to ask you a question. What are the most interesting pieces of feedback that you're getting from the field, from meeting with people in a field about the challenges? Like, what are our technicians in a field and service managers, maintenance team members are seeing as being the main challenges? What are the main concerns that they have in a field? What would you say are the top 3 or 5?
So from the technician's perspective, is I just really I'll summarize this, but I just wish people in the office really knew what it was like to be us and to be in the field. And if you want to have it as a complaint or an opportunity, I like to view them as opportunities to improve. Is the work environment, treatment, the way that we're spoken to and treated really needs to improve. And now this comes with a couple of things. I don't mean just verbally and interpersonally, but it's a difficult environment to work in. You're on rooftops, you're in attics, you have hostile residents, sometimes filthy apartments, sometimes clean ones, everything in between. But the way that management often and customers interact with the service team on a daily basis is the number one thing that comes up across the board. After that, it would be resources like tools and equipment, and then pay, of course. And we can get into that a little bit more. But those are the top 3 things. And interestingly enough, they don't really change too much, but they may shift the order of priority. And the treatment is number one. And a conversation I just had the other day, I was in South Carolina doing a seminar, and the room stood up once I asked the question. I said, do you really know, honestly, if you're a manager and the room is full of managers and regional managers, do you really understand that your technicians, many of them, are barely making it and they're struggling to live paycheck to paycheck? And it just kind of got quiet. And I got a lot of amens on one side of the room and a lot of open eyes on the other. But when you get into the conversation, it's more about treatment and whether they have the resources that they need.
Mark, when it comes to developing maintenance leaders in our industry, what would you say is the single most important skill that organizations should be focusing on?
So the skill itself, you have 2 basic categories. You have hard skills and soft skills, right? So if I were to summarize this in like one word or some kind of phrase, is the unwavering commitment to get people the training they need, no matter what endeavor or avenue it's in, or discipline. So very often what happens is companies will have a wonderful intention and they want to provide training and they want to build technicians. And then as soon as things start to get difficult, time is of the essence. They get a little pressure put on them from getting results. Training falls off, and then usually preventative maintenance, and then all of the other ancillary and kind of other things that are important. And so those are the 2 that get pushed. So I would say train people no matter what. And if you can find that, commit to it, everything else will come from that.
We're talking about this, and a memory comes back to me from like 16 years ago, probably. A very high up executive of a company I was working for at the time came to me. I was a regional director, and said, I don't really want to pay for maintenance training because we're paying for this training and these guys don't stick around. They're just gonna up and leave our company. So I don't want to pay. There's no reason for me to pay. And I just kind of stood out there and just shook my head. And that moment, I understood that that is there is something that's gonna be hard to change, and it's something that probably, as long as that individual was in charge of certain things, that things would not improve for our maintenance teams, right? We're not gonna get better, like better culture, better environments. We're not gonna get better anything. We're just gonna continue to be a revolving door. So, what's your say on my story?
Yeah, so I have similar. Like I remember a gentleman, he told me, he said, "Your paycheck is thanks enough. Get to work." And I was like, "Okay, you just spoke volumes about who you are as a human being, and I don't want to work for you, right? And I won't recommend anyone work with you." But most of the time, training, there's a couple things that happen. One is viewed as a liability instead of an asset because it's an expense. And then with that expense and more trained staff, you risk, in some people's perception, the likelihood of them leaving or going somewhere else. But it's really rare that people leave an environment where they feel like they're very well taken care of and they're encouraged to do well and prosper. On the flip side of that, you'll have the person that, and I can tell you this as a coach, is in my personal life, I'm a jiu-jitsu coach. I've been doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu since I came here in the US. I have hundreds of students, and that's what I'm building the building for. So if anyone is listening to this, you could write this phrase down. You could watch. People that train win. People that don't train don't. And it is that simple, but it is not that easy to make the time to do so. And the minute you get under duress and you start to falter and decline your training, you are increasing the likelihood remarkably of your failure. And if you don't, because the thing is, we look for this almost kind of event-based progression where all of a sudden a thing happens. It's like turning on the lights and all of a sudden you're trained. You go to a course for 2 days. Oh, they're certified. They can do everything. No. And in my opinion, certifications are not training. They transfer liability. And if you want to train, you have to have this mindset as 1 or 2%, maybe 0.5% a day on a consistent, ongoing, never-ending basis. And the truly remarkable high performers are obsessed with small increments of improvement. And the thing is they won't even see it themselves. But if you don't see someone for 6 months and then you run into them or you meet them and see them, you will see the difference, but they don't see it in themselves. And so if you want to run a business, you better train people, because if you don't train them, somebody else will, and they're going to go there. And the number one thing, not number one, it's one of the top 3 for sure that people want, is they want an environment that will help them improve. And if you don't provide that, they're going to go find one.
Mark, what can we as an industry do or do better to attract talent to the industry? We're looking at the shrinking pool of talent. In part is because people are retiring. Like people that have legacy knowledge, a lot of them are retiring, reaching retiring age. Secondly, we're bleeding people. We're losing people to trades. We're losing people to construction jobs. Losing people to everybody pretty much, even warehouse jobs, even the gigs. The gig economy is real out there. When you compete in a market, you're not just competing with a property down the street. You're competing with everybody that has brick and mortar store as a business, and everybody that hires people remotely. It could be a company from Australia that gonna steal your employee. If they're gonna offer them remote work, that they don't have to show up to the office and the pay is competitive, like this individual is gonna take it. So what are some ways that we could actually have a standing chance in this fight over talent?
Okay, so this is several questions layered in one, and I'll just ask this question of anyone that works for a company. So if you're a manager, regional manager, HR, VP, whatever, if you're in a position where you have something to do with people getting hired, imagine this: you take 10 tables and you put them in a room, and at each table you put one representative from a different multifamily company. So you have 10 tables, 10 reps, 10 different companies. You have one prospect that comes into that room and they are able to visit each table and speak with each representative. Why would anyone, other than pay, why would they want to work for you? Now, if you can't answer that question, how can you market that question? How can you advertise the answer to that question? So if you don't know, how can they figure it out? So you have to know why people would want to stay and be attracted and gravitate towards your company in the first place. The next thing is, once you figure that out, then you have to realize what skill set you need and advertise that. So if you look at the advertisements, and you do me a favor, everyone listening and watching to this, go on all of the job search forums and platforms and just start searching for maintenance technician. And you will see, I would say 99% of the same advertisements, verbiage, cut and paste software templates in the same order of information, and you'll see the same phrases and about the same pay based on geographical locations and differences. So I would start using language that technicians actually use, find out what their search habits and terms and phrases are, and then I would reformat that, because what happens with most companies is they say this is, and I see this all the time. So-and-so company, a groundbreaking national company with this geographical footprint, and they talk about all their business success and accolades, and they don't mention anything about what they're going to do for the person until the very bottom, and they hide the pay down at the bottom. And what technicians do is they search and they see numbers and they go, okay, I can live on this. Let me read the rest. It's close to my home. And so it almost is like an inverse pyramid. And what if I recommend you try this, just put at the top what the pay is, where it is, because people feel like when you lie to them and hide where the property is, they don't know if they should go, and they skip because they want to know if they can make it to work. And if they have kids, can I pick them up? If they don't have kids, do I want to drive that far? And then they'll say, okay, this is what it's paying. It's close. Check, check. What are you doing for me? And if you don't answer that question at the top, they're just going to scroll to the next one. Then you start putting more information about the company, where it is, how amazing the company itself is, what their story is. Because once you meet the qualifications to provide that person a life, then they will buy into the story of the company or decide to scroll. And so I would use language that's consistent with people, because we all have kind of these, like if you hire technical people, they speak in more technical terms. And so it's interesting because the software systems that are used, the templates basically, are just like leasing agents manage. You can't tell the difference. They're all exactly the same. So there's nothing discernible when you're looking for technicians. And then the other thing we do is we don't advertise outside of our industry at all. And to go back to what you said, Adrian, it's like having a fish bowl of fish. And every year we take a spoon of water and we take it out of the bowl, and the water gets smaller, and then the fish start not doing so well. And then a few are gone. And then pretty much you got a little bit of water and maybe one fish. And there's over 300 million people in this country. There's no reason why we can't use all of our wonderful intelligence and resourcefulness and technology to do something different. But what happens very often is people think to themselves, I need to personally approve or like the way this looks before I'll attempt it. Instead of trying, because, sometimes, Adrian, maybe you and I are like, you know what? I don't think that way. Let's see if it works. And sometimes you put different bait on the hook and you're like, oh, I guess the fish are biting today. Or you put a different advertisement out. You're like, I guess this worked for the younger generation, where it may not work for mine. In fact, I probably wouldn't even word it that way, but it's effective. And so I would start with that. But you can also go around your area and ask yourself this: what other industries or businesses in this area in a 10-mile radius have comparable skills that might be compatible with our industry? And then start finding out where they advertise, and then start expanding your circle. So that's what I would start. That's a layered question with layered answers. But that's what I would do.
Oh, that's a great answer. Mark, as a subject matter expert in skill development, what strategies would you recommend for cultivating maintenance leaders in an organization?
So, this is, I'm glad you asked this question. There is what I refer to as the rise of the regional maintenance director, which I think is long over needed, and it's an increasing position. And I'm working with a client now, and there's plenty others. But the first thing is you have to figure out what skills they need to improve, right? So I'll give you kind of an example. I put some notes here for me. Let me pull them up. I'll read them off to you. And we have to figure out exactly what it is that we're looking for. So you can ask yourself this: is there awareness? In other words, are we constantly surprised by something that keeps happening? Do we have personnel issues, enough people? If you don't, you got to get more people. So when the regional maintenance directors usually come up through the field, typically it's because of their technical proficiencies, not their interpersonal or soft skills. It's you're really good at repairing things. You know what? Let's put you in a position of leadership. And they have zero leadership training. And if they did, they got it somewhere else. Or they have no business training or administrative training, and they're not used. So they could build an engine. They could probably repair an aircraft, but they don't know how to use the technology that you require them to communicate through. So there's like this learning curve. And so I would start with those things: supervisory, leadership, communication, coaching, time management, all of the things that help someone run a business, become successful, other than their in-field proficiencies. And I got to tell you, it's remarkable when people do that. And I'm working with a client now, and they made this leadership development program just for the service department. If you're a manager, can't attend. Regional manager, nobody. Specifically service. It is so popular, the managers are a little upset that they can't get in on this training. And this is the second year, and you can see the measurement in lower turnover, quicker responses, fewer outstanding work orders, better business decisions, and overall performance is improved. And so we have to figure out, the other thing is, okay, once we get them in this position, what is their role? And what are the limits of their decision making ability? But I would take all the soft skills that help a manager become successful at a business and make it applicable to the regional maintenance director, so they can apply their technical proficiencies to that. And that's exactly what I would do. And you're going to have remarkable results, because when the thing is too, is like, there's a phrase I like to use, is you have to grow seeds, not weeds. And you can't just put a seed in the ground and expect a fruit. You have to cultivate the medium, the soil, the company culture, and then you have to give it enough nutrients, resources to grow. And not only grow enough, but grow enough to produce fruit and make its own seeds. And what the regional managers do is it takes 2 to 3 years of them being in the field to start developing new leaders under them where their effectiveness is clearly visible. That is, it should take no less than 2 to 3 years to see an actual difference measurable in the field. And if it's less than that, I'd like to know how they did it.
Mark, I want to go to talk about career paths. And I do have a question for you here. What's
Okay.
your take on career pathing in an industry for maintenance? And how can organizations define and nurture career progression for their teams?
Okay, so there's a few things to consider. And I remember I had a conversation, Adrian, with someone, and I freely give my number out to people, and call me. I won't return your call on Sunday, but 6 days a week I'll call you back pretty much. And I had this conversation with a gentleman, and he was just defeated. And and it sticks with me to this day. He says, Mark, I don't want a job forever. I want a career. I want to feel pride and know that even if I'm on the same property, I'm doing better, I'm progressing, I'm learning more things, I'm gaining more responsibility. I'll never overlook what I do, but I don't want to feel like I'm stuck in a job. I want to feel like I've opened up into a career. And the other thing, and I asked managers this actually this week at the meeting, I said, how many of you, respect the service technicians? And all the hands go up in the room. Everyone applauds. And it was wonderful, and everybody kind of started looking around the room at each other. I said, now, how many of you respect this industry so much that the primary goal is to take your own children and train them to come into this industry and have a career in it? And the room got quiet. And until we change that perspective, it's really not as meaningful as we say it is, because when we say it and it's not being delivered through actions, then it's not really truly believed. And so I think we need to change those perspectives. And most owners, especially regional managers and above, if they have someone that they really value, typically they get really creative, and they will find ways to grow that person's career, even if they are at the same property primarily.
Reactive versus proactive when it comes to maintenance.
Okay.
20 years I've been around, and for 20 years we've been playing defense. We've been running around trying to put out fires. what would it take for us to change this mindset from reactive to proactive? What would it take for us as an industry to change the game from always playing defense to going on offense and win big?
So if you're a business owner, right, what you want is you want results. Okay. And when you hire people, they have to generate results. And I think when you hire someone, they should be able to think to themselves, I want to help these owners and managers make their company successful. Now, if you can prove to them that you are, you're going to be a lot more likely to get some of the things you need. You could do a side-by-side comparison. You take this region, all you do is reactive maintenance and preventative maintenance when you can. Please, let's take these properties, say 10, just because it's easy, the number 10, and then say, okay, we're going to do what we call, because you have 4 types of maintenance. You have reactive, proactive, preventative, and predictive. And the closer you move to predictive, that means you're replacing things before they actually can go bad. So it's not just preventative where you're maintaining things on an ongoing basis. You're ahead of it and replacing them before they could go bad. Now, it will cost more money in the short term, but what's the value of your asset, right, in 10 years? And so if you did a side-by-side comparison of one region to the other, I think in a few years, you'd see a remarkable reduction in capital expenses, unwanted financial surprises, floods, leaks, fires, landscaping disasters, and things like that. And the small repairs would prevent almost all of the capital projects because they're ahead. So we have to, if you're an owner, you have to just think about it this way, like, what matters to me? What do I actually want to see? And of course, it's, more revenue, more profit. Everybody understands that. But are you willing and are you mentally flexible enough to try something and say, you know what, let's test it and let's find out. But the more that you're ahead of problems, the less that you react, because reaction, like reactive maintenance, takes the most amount of time to get work done because you're not prepared. You have to get the work order, service request, and then go get prepared and then go and spend time and hope you got everything. Whereas if it's preventative or predictive or proactive, you already have everything laid out with your resources. And then the only commodity that you're concerned about is time. And you can measure that pretty easily when you have everything you need every time because it's planned ahead.
You said something, are you willing to try when it comes to management or even go deeper, like investors, property owners?
Mm-hmm.
And I had to say that the main challenge that I see for that happening is for the past probably 15 years or more, multifamily has been super generous with everybody that invested. Everybody made money, like lots of money.
Sure.
All the investors have been making money. Of course, with a few exceptions, and I think the exceptions are the reckless ones that didn't make money, right? They just overextended, they made bad decisions. But for the ones that made good decisions, they made a lot of money. So I see that this being the biggest challenge for us going from defense to offense, because for investors that are sitting out there and are looking at things, look, this has been working. Why fix it if it ain't broken, in our opinion? It's making us money. We're making money, like we're, the performers are being met. Everything goes well. Why should we just make the change? What would make them approach, like take a mind shift? What would it take for a mind shift, for what would be the sell to sell them on, hey, like, if you do this, this is gonna be great, just outside of just stating, right, if you're gonna spend more money, you're gonna be making more money, just like a good selling point for us to bring it to the owners.
Yeah, I'll give you like an example. So my daughter, she lives at student housing across the street from the university. And so it's not owned by the campus. So she had a refrigerator that was leaking water, didn't work. So she puts in a service request, and I'm trying not to be involved because this is like a learning experience, even for my own children. And eight service calls later, and 2 months later, they just replaced her refrigerator. And then it came without an ice maker. Now, let's just count up the payroll alone. That's 8 hours. If not, and it's more than that, actually. It's way more. And I think we both know that. Plus the cost of the production loss, right? So if you're an owner, it's a production loss is a really valuable consideration, because that person could have spent 8 to 16 hours doing other things than this, and a refrigerator is only a few $100s. So when you calculate your time as a commodity, and it's valuable to you as it should be, and you eliminate production losses, which is what you could have been doing if you weren't repeatedly doing the same thing that didn't work, you're going to save a ton of money, payroll, resources, capital expenses, and your results will be much higher. And so it's like soft costs in a way, through the service department itself. And a lot of times people just don't think about that, because they just look at the invoices that come in and all they know is they're spending money. But if you're an owner, and let's say, Adrian, they hired us and you and I brought everything we get, and they said, you could do whatever you want for a year, run it like you would. It'd be clean, organized, color coded, inventory controlled. And before something becomes a disaster, it disappears and it's replaced with something that's going to work with no issues whatsoever. And so there's a couple things. The financial impact is one. Just the freedom of the time that you have itself. You're not draining your resources as much, which is your personnel. And when you drain understaffed personnel and they're overwhelmed, they're going to disappear. And it creates this cycle that's really difficult to get out of. And all you're doing is counting invoices instead of being ahead of things before they could go bad. And I'll give you an example. There was a company in Virginia. Amazing. By the way, to this day, they have a waiting list to get in to work for them. And so they would make it a habit to knock on someone's door. They would give them 2 tickets to a movie, and they would give them a little bit for lunch. And they said, do us a favor, go to a movie, have lunch on us. When you come back, you'll have a new water heater installed in your home with everything cleaned up. You won't even know we were there. So they replaced the water heaters for $30, $40. The person got a wonderful experience. That's one less water heater that could leak for at least 10 or 15 years. And that is a standard practice for them to this day. And it's amazing. And they do really well.
Such an amazing story. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Hopefully more owners are watching out there, and they'll give it a thought.
I hope so.
Mark, I want to go to retention, another hot topic. Where, I mentioned the revolving door before. We're getting people, we're onboarding them in a hurry, we're overwhelming them with unrealistic workloads, and we're having them face, hostility from the residents and also from their own coworkers. I say bosses for the most part. And as a consequence, basically what we're doing, we're pushing them towards the back door, like very, very fast.
Yeah.
They're getting in, and we do everything we can to push them to that back door to get them out of there. And then we're starting the cycle all over again. So retention is critical, needless to say. What strategies do you believe that are essential for keeping top talent engaged and motivated?
So top talent wants a few things. They want leadership that's decisive. They want communication, and they want resources. And then when they have the resources, they want to be left alone to do their job. So stop interrupting, right? And that is one of the really hot topics of service technicians. The other thing, of course, is you have to pay them fairly. So I'll give you an example. The national average pay for Starbucks starts at $15 to $17 an hour, depending on where you are, the seasonal variances. But do you want to work in the air conditioning with people for that much money? Or do you want to work on the air conditioning in 100 degrees for the same or less? And if you have a logical, critical thinking, life experience, quality of life kind of approach, you're probably going to pick the one that's less difficult. So if you can do a few things with your technicians, get them the tools they need. They need a set of gauges per person. Go by the meters. If you're short-staffed and that payroll amount is $25,000 to $40,000 a year, spend 25% of that or half of that on tools for everybody on site, so they have everything they need, and you can multiply their effectiveness, and they're not going to leave because they have everything. Who else would give someone everything they need? I don't know anyone. Maybe you've met them. I've never met that person where they said, you've given me everything I've ever asked for. You treat me with respect. You give me time off when I need it. You let me go the extra mile when I have to. Not everything is a crisis. You take good care of me. I want to leave. I don't know anyone that's ever said that. And the expectations from office staff sometimes are just, they're just unrealistic, right? So if you want realistic results, you need realistic skill sets, realistic time management, like estimating how long it actually takes to do something. You need realistic resources, and then you need realistic timelines. And if you don't have those, all you're going to do is get upset. And what happens often is management, in many aspects, will think, well, I know someone that's never worked here that told me something different, and I value their input more than yours because I'm managing you and your performance and your time and resources. And that's why a lot of people will leave, because they feel like they're never quite trusted. So if a technician says, look, Adrian, it took 2 hours to do this, Joe, Susie, whoever, this time it took 3, I had to do a little extra carpentry work, you go, okay, I understand, thank you for your work. But if you're constantly micromanaging and drilling down people, they're just going to leave, And the other thing that comes up sometimes, Adrian, as well, what if we buy them tools and they steal them? I'm like, well, then you hired a thief. Maybe you should work on interviews and screening, because if someone steals toilet paper, are you never going to buy that again? I mean, you're going to buy it, right? So it's the person, not the fact that you purchased something for them. The loss may be a little bit higher, but it's really difficult for people to leave when you give them everything they want and you hold them accountable, and you should, right? But we have to treat people with respect and dignity. And overwhelmingly, that is the thing that technicians want improved, in addition to pay.
Mark, another hot topic of 2023, it's centralization.
Yep.
And of course, I want to focus on centralization in maintenance. First of all, is centralization, is this word a buzzword to you? Is this something real? How real is it? How realistic is for us to implement centralization in maintenance? What are your thoughts?
Okay, so this is a yes and no answer, and to me, it's a buzzword. Okay, so let's just get to the quick and short of it. If you manage an HVAC company, an electrical company, carpentry, maintenance services, you should centralize your shop and have like a dispatching kind of approach to service. So you have someone that's on the phone, they have software tracking everybody in the vans and the trucks, and they will send work orders and service requests to you. But here's the deal. If you look at it like it's an HVAC company, say, for example, you're not getting more than 3 or 4 service calls done a day. There's no way. So the expectation of that comes in with the billing amount on the invoice. So you're going to bill a minimum of $300 to $500 at minimum for each visit. So that's a for-profit company, which is different than what we do because it comes out of the operating expenses. So then you have to measure the time. And what you have to really consider is the time of distance to and from, and then traffic patterns. And how come it took you an hour last week and now it took you 3, and you were stuck in traffic with a car accident and you got 2 things done? So when people say centralization, we have to really understand what they mean. Is it one property, one shop within a quarter mile of 10 properties? That might be okay. But if someone's driving around, you have the car, insurance, liability, time off site. What if they forget something? And I was an HVAC contractor. And I remember the day, I still tell this story. I drove from Queens, I went over the bridge, go to Manhattan, I get all my tools out, and I realized I forgot one thing. I had to put everything back in the elevator, go down the stairs, go to the parking garage, get my van, drive all the way back to Long Island, drive all the way back to Manhattan, and it took forever. Whereas if you're decentralized and you have shops on the property, you just go a half or a quarter of a mile, maybe tops, and you get what you need. So I would measure time as one of the utmost important benchmarks in centralization. And I think, in my opinion, most people will decentralize after they try to centralize. They'll try it for a year or 2. They'll say this is absolutely not worth it. And then they'll go back to decentralized shops on property. That's my opinion.
My thoughts exactly.
Okay.
We're running very inefficiently.
Yeah.
With no centralization. So when you add this centralization, basically you're adding windshield time.
Correct.
To the equation.
Yep.
So we were super inefficient to begin with. How adding travel time is going to make things more efficiently? And I heard the argument that, well, we're gonna do specialized teams, so we're gonna have someone that's specialized in HVAC, and they handle, work orders in a certain area. And let's just, for the sake of the argument, to say that there's 5 properties in the area. Well, if the 5 properties in the area are getting, in the summertime, let's say 2 tickets per property HVAC, only 2 tickets, that's 10 tickets. how is that one person going to cover 10 tickets a day with travel time? They're not going to even cover half of that. So the math is really not working because people are thinking these people are some magic killers, kind of like the
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
touching things and they're just healing them. They just fixing them all of a sudden by they show up and the situation all of a sudden got better. So it's not happening that way because the workload stays the same no matter how you shuffle it
Right.
around. Like if you have enough to keep a person busy for 6 hours at a site, between two sites that's going to be 12 hours. They only have 8 hours in a day, and that doesn't even count for the travel time. So
No.
could you make it's all time, like you said, it's all time? How could you make it's like basic math to me, right? How
So
could you make that work?
to me, people that say that and believe in that have never run a service department. There's no way. If you ever ran a service department, and anyone listening to this, I encourage you, don't believe us. Go ask people that have successfully run service departments for years that you look up to and you respect and say, would you not do you think it's a good idea? Would you do this with your region and company? And I can tell you, they're going to say no way. And so if you want to try it, try it. The thing is, and I will say this though, the hallmark of an effective leader is to try new things. But if you have 10 industry leaders with a lot of experience and 8 or 9 out of 10 are like, I wouldn't do it, you might want to just give that some credibility. And so, and the other thing is then you get into these other issues like, okay, there's two people. One complains a lot. One has a dominating personality. One's a little more timid. Who are they going to respond to first? Right? So are the managers allowed to contact that person? If the answer is yes, you cannot do that. So it would go through a central dispatch, which changes everything. And then you have fair housing to be, it opens up this Pandora's box of operations. I would stay away from it unless you have a remarkable amount of units within walking distance to the shop. And that you'll see this in like major metro areas, like say New York City, Chicago, Miami, where there's 3 buildings on a block and there's one place for the shop and everybody gets what they need and they push carts back and forth. You could do that, but I wouldn't centralize. That's my opinion.
Mark, next topic, key performance indicators for maintenance team members. Which metrics do you consider the most important for measuring success?
Okay, so the first thing I would do, and this is for everyone, I want you to try this. If your office staff and service staff have any if their bonus, if they have a bonus like an operating bonus, NOI bonus or whatever, if the preventative maintenance expenditures influence that bonus at all, remove it. Because what happens is you're financially incentivizing someone to not spend money, including on preventative maintenance, in order to get that bonus. So I would remove that from the line item of whatever influences a person getting a bonus. Next thing is, of course, the NOIs. And so, but the other part of this, if you're listening and watching this, please write this down: critical success factors or key success factors. And you can have both, right? So critical is important, important. And then the key are the things that you observe, right? But they're more behavioral based. So for example, nobody goes home until every communication that came in before 3 p.m. is answered, whatever that is. And the other thing, I have a couple here, I'm going to read them, is I have the callback percentage. Okay, so in other words, for example, my daughter that's in the apartment, they came 8 times, eight times. Now, let me just say this too. The people that I spoke with, I was just very kind, trying to be understanding. I was like, look, I understand, and they're like, whatever. And they started to get dismissive. And then they started not to even want to talk to us. And when I walked in the office, they were like, and now here's the deal. All of that could have been avoided had those person had the resources and they had proactive maintenance. Done. Would have just got a new fridge, a couple $100, move on. And they could do 8 to 16 hours worth of work somewhere else. So the callback percentage, in my opinion, should be important. I would say 10% or less if you want to just start with a number. The next thing is the complete versus pending service request ratio. And then we have outstanding work orders not to exceed a certain amount. So this is attached to that. So for example, no more than 5% of work orders are allowed to be outstanding at any time. So if you have 300 units, that would be about 15 work orders. You should never have more than that. If so, we got to figure out why. Because there will always be a percentage that's like in waiting. It's just how it goes. And then your employee turnover rating, I think, is important, because where there's employee turnover in one or two places and the same management in place, it's management. If you have employee turnover and it's sporadic and it's inconsistent in its location, then you probably have an organizational or process-based correction that needs to take place. And the other part is, it's called the average time resolution time. You could say the mean time to resolve, the average time to resolve, the time to resolve, but something like that. And where you're measuring this, and then what you can do, and I recommend you do this, is you give an overall service performance rating to each technician. And you could give that to the property as well. So that would include the administrative part. So you're measuring the overall effectiveness of the technician through like feedback from the customers, residents, timeliness, outstanding work orders, pending requests. And then the other part of that in the office could be measuring all of that as a whole through the administrative process, because a lot of times the office staff is the gatekeepers to communication between the service team and the resident. And if that takes a long time, I can't tell you how many times, Adrian, and I think anyone listening and watching will agree to this, where someone's like, oh yeah, I forgot a service call came in today, I meant to tell you about it. Or we had an emergency come in, I saw the notification in our system, but I didn't tell you. And since you don't have an email and you don't have a cell phone, or we can't communicate with you, or there's no signal where you are, you found out at 5 minutes before 5. And so I would eliminate that as much as, I know you're laughing, right? Because, and then the other indicator, I think this is super important, is that the time spent training on an annual average. So for example, nobody trains less than multifamily. There's not a single niche in the entire service industry that trains less than us. And I think we could fix that. So if you can make the minimum training time for technicians between 40 and 120 hours, and don't count certifications, they're not training. Right now, the average hours are 11 for training. And it's usually fair housing, sexual harassment, customer service. But I mean like skill and interpersonal and soft skills. Increase the time spent training, TST if you want to call it, to about 40 to 120 hours a year. And if you go below that, you have to answer for it. And so now we're forcing ourselves to perform at a higher level. So those would be, and I'm actually presenting on metrics that matter at the NAA next year. So I don't want to give away the whole list, but those are some that I would consider for sure.
We gotta do we gotta clip this video, just make it like a preview of what you're going to present next year in 2024.
Okay, I thank you. Yeah, we should do that.
Mark, I want to switch gears a little bit and
Okay.
talk prop tech technology. What are your thoughts on prop tech products currently available for maintenance in the market? And what are they any features that are yet to be developed that you think that they're not there available on the market and they could be very useful for our maintenance teams in the field?
Yeah, so there's a couple. So most of the property technology platforms, and I don't really want to endorse any, but most people, there's a few that most everybody uses, and I think they're okay. But service teams usually use a small percentage. They don't use the whole percentage of the functions. And the idea is, and let me just say this with technology, if people spend more time working and communicating through technology than they spend working in the field, technology is not helpful. Technology should enhance performance and metrics, measurements, but it should not replace skill sets or take time away from the field. So the more that technology takes time away from the field, the less in-field presence our technicians have. So that's a major consideration. The thing that I do like about the technology a lot is it's moved away from other industries bringing their platform into multifamily to things being designed specifically for multifamily. And so I commend a lot of the companies out there that are doing that. And something I've seen emerging is there's a company now that just started, and I'm learning more about them. And I think I'm going to learn a lot more about them in the next few months, is they do remote video conferencing emergency service requests. So there's a property here not too far from here, and I was talking to the staff, and they were trying this new technology. So they were short staffed. They had 2 out of 4 people. They work all the time. They're overwhelmed. The guy's been on call forever. And they employed this technology where the resident can choose to try it, and they teleconference with someone that's remote, and they'll say, okay, walk up, show me where the breaker panel is. You see that breaker, move it back and forth. You know what? You need to call a technician. They'll be in soon. Or thank you for calling. And it was my pleasure to help you solve and resolve the issue. So that's coming up. And I'm curious to see how it goes. The only thing I've seen is it takes people a while to feel to really know that they're not going to be replaced. You're just reducing the amount of payroll that comes in after hours. And so I think that's good. But most of the big platforms I'm pretty impressed with.
You were mentioning about, the time that you spend like using technology to get things accomplished. The more you spend, the worse it is, the less ineffective this
Yeah.
piece of tech is. And I agree. And I always go, the first two things that come to mind are Amazon and Uber, right? These two amazing companies, incredibly successful. And I tell prop tech um, founders and people that work in prop tech, look, are you aware, or have you ever used a training video to learn how to use the Uber app? And I think we all know the answer, right?
Right.
You should be building a product that you shouldn't need a tutorial to use. You put it in
Correct.
the end user hand, and then intuitively they're gonna open up the app and figure everything out on their own. That easy. You eliminate as much friction as possible. Get it as close as you can to a frictionless process, frictionless experience. And I think the challenge that we have is this with PropTech in general, and maintenance PropTech in particular. Companies that are developing products tailored towards maintenance, they're hiring, uh, I guess, people that design the product, or developers, or people that know how to write code.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know all the language, the details,
Yeah,
but
neither do I.
the code. And also, secondly, they hire people to push the sell. So there's two categories of people that you will find in a prop tech company, and in between, the end user, it's nowhere represented, does not exist. So my question to them is, how do you expect that your product is going to be successful, is going to get a decent adoption rate from the end user, when the end user, it's nowhere in this picture that I'm just painting to you? So don't you think that is necessary that you bring that end user somehow to be represented in a process to help you build the product that's actually tailored towards the end user? It's not tailored towards the VP of the company or the CEO, the one that signs the check, because ultimately you're gonna make a sale. You're going to make sales.
Yeah.
But then when that thing happens and you get the check, you're gonna have to start performing. And if you have a product that the end user hates using, they're not gonna use it. The company, the beneficiary, your client is gonna realize that this is a low adoption rate. We're paying for something that everybody hates using, and then you're gonna end up losing business. And this is gonna be an ongoing cycle. Why not just fixing it? Bring the end user to be represented to help you build the product that you need to be building to be successful. Do you disagree?
Yeah,
With,
no. So you have three prongs or three points of contact, which is the customer. So how do they benefit from this, if they even know it exists? Two, the end user, which is us, which we're talking about, and then you have the administrative managerial component. So a lot of times these programs are done, software as a service, by people that do code, managers, and like, oh, I would like a report to do this, and I want a dashboard that looks like that and this, and then the person in the field that's knocking on doors, shaking hands, is like, what is this? This is not important to me at all. Or there's a basic rule. I call it the 3-click rule. If you have to click on anything 3 times, there's something wrong, right? And so I think they need to get more people in this, like what you just said, and you maybe think of these things too. So thank you, is to really get people that are in the field and say, what would be beneficial to you if this could do what you wanted it to do without wasting your time? How much and how little at the same time would you want it to do, and what would that be? And the other thing is, if you want someone to figure out a loophole or how to break a system, give it to the people in the field. They will exploit everything. They're going to know, because we are crafty, critical, troubleshooting minded people in the field, and we're going to figure it out. So I think there needs to be a better component from the field. And I wish these companies would bring, maybe people like us, but other people too that are not like us, that are out there knocking on doors and say, what would you get rid of immediately? I would start there. And then how would you change what we have? Or even, you can ask the same question about a service department. If we just eliminated everything and you started with a clean slate and you could rebuild a service department to be exactly the way it should be in your mind, what would that look like? And I'm pretty sure it would include very simple software, if any, right? So I think the software is beneficial, but it can have 1,000 features and people use 4. And I think that's the main issue with it today, is because it provides a better value proposition in sales, but it doesn't deliver service in the field. And so when you want to buy this, you're like, wow, it has all these features that our competitors don't. This is more value. Instead of asking a person in the field, does this actually solve problems for you on a day-to-day basis? And so I would leave that out there if that's so. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that.
Want to switch gears a little bit?
Okay.
Go right down towards your wheelhouse, right there. What should multifamily maintenance training look like in 2023?
So in 2023, I think you should have, I would just say benchmark 40 to 120 hours of training, period. If you don't do it, we need to sit down and talk, and we have to address it in your weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual reviews. And if you're the supervisor or the manager, you directly will answer for why they're not going to training. So I would start there. And the next, because what happens is, well, I don't want to get into that, but just the idea is we have to push people and nudge them towards performing better, and we have to give them the resources. So I would do soft skill training, hard skill training, which is a technical part. And if you could take a sheet of paper and just draw boxes just right next to each other, a row of boxes, below them another row of boxes, and go pull a history from your property. What are the top 5 service requests in every category? Plumbing, electrical, HVAC, carpentry, miscellaneous, whatever that is. I would make sure everybody gets training in those immediately. When that's done, get it in the top 10. While you're also evaluating each person, because if you ask a manager what the training is important, they usually fair housing, sexual harassment, customer service, whatever. If you ask a technician, electrical, HVAC, plumbing, oh, by the way, I'll do those too. And so we have opposite views of the spectrum. So I think we need more training. We need to teach supervisors how to be supervisors, how to manage, lead, and influence. And I can't stand the term working supervisor. When I hear that phrase, I cringe. The job of a supervisor is to supervise. There's no that it's not do both. And it's like, would you ever say I want a working manager? It doesn't even make sense, right? So I would start with that training, and I would put it in 2 columns, and it would be hard social skills, business skills, soft skills, and then the hard skills. And I would balance that out depending on the person. And then I would make management answer for why that is or is not done. And I think it should be part of your bonus and performance structure. And so I think that's what it should be. And I would say up to 1/3 of training could be in the field on the job training with a mentor. But the mentorship is really important, and we need to get those in the field.
Mark, what practical advice can you offer to the audience about identifying opportunities and maximizing personal growth within the multifamily maintenance field?
Okay, so if you're going to ask somebody, we'll frame this 2 ways. What's your weak point? What are your weaknesses? Person's going to look at you and be like, I don't know. But if I asked you, do me a favor, we're going to send you to training. What I want to know is what you would like to go to first and put it in a list priority. The other thing is, if you're a manager and you're making these decisions, and it depends on who's listening to this and watching this, right? What you encourage is what you multiply. What you standardize, what you enforce is what you standardize. So avoidance is a standardization now. Addressing things before they become an issue is a standardization. So the practical advice is, are you, and I'm asking you this question, if you're listening and watching this, me to you personally, are you making every single person around you better, and how? And if not, why? And you're going to find that there's 2 basic types of people that bring everyone else around them. So at the lowest point, they're better than they were before, or people that don't really want anyone else to look quite as good as they are. And that's usually through fear. So the practical advice I would say is this: No information, no knowledge goes to the grave. Everybody learns, everybody trains. We win together, we lose together. There's no me and you, and you can't be people that go to the same place and show up for work. If you're a team, it goes team, teammate, me. And if that's out of order, everything's out of balance. And the practical advice I would say is, if you think training is expensive, just have a group full of untrained people and see how much that costs you between lawsuits, liability, and projects. It's going to be through the roof. So the practical advice is, as a leader and as a manager, you control resources, time, and money. You don't control people. What you do as a leader is you influence people, and your team is counting on you. They hope and they wish and they are counting on you that you will help them make better. So the next thing is, how much time are you willing to sacrifice for that to happen? Because you'll hear these things, and I just like the perspective shifts more than anything. If, like, say I have kids, right, and imagine I told them, you can be anything, the world is yours, I want you to be amazing, I want you to build this wonderful life, but when you go to work, no one will let you be as good as they are. And that's not how it should be. It should be like, I want you to go to a place where they're going to push you and nudge you in the right direction. You may not like it sometimes, but you know it's better for you overall. And you're going to have a coach and a manager and a supervisor that are going to put you in classes whether you want to or not. Trust me, 5 years from now, you're going to be grateful that you went. And the reason that most people fear training, and they say, I've been doing this for so long, and I can tell you this as a coach, is people don't want to look or feel like they look stupid. And, that's a thing that people, they put a rating on themselves. And so I can't tell you how many people go to training and they're like, you know what? I didn't want to go. And I wish. And let me tell you this, Adrian. I was this week in South Carolina and I did a keynote. And there was a guy at the lobby. I was walking out with my bags. I was going to get a snack on the way out the front doors of the hotel. And he said, "Hey, Mark, man, can I talk to you for a second?" I said, "Of course, sure." And he goes, "I'm ex-military." I said, "Well, me too." And he goes, "Can I be direct with you?" I said, you will not hurt my feelings no matter what you say, unless you talk bad about my mom." And he kind of laughed. And he said, "When I saw your name on the advertisement for this," he goes, "I thought to myself, he's just a maintenance guy. What could he possibly have to say?" That's what he said to me. And I said, I am, first of all, man, I'm so glad I met you. And I appreciate you saying that, because many people, not all, many people, too many, think that. And, I've been running successful businesses for many years. I have a team, an academy, and I'm still learning like everybody else. I've made every mistake I could. But the fact that you came, and he says, what really stood out to me, Mark, is he said, you spoke in a way that actually you made me feel what you were saying. And I shouldn't have had that perception. And I think I've done that with my team before. And he said, "So, man, just because of you, I'm going to think and look at my team a little differently." And your team can give you really valuable insight if you are willing to listen and receptive to making changes. But the hallmark of a good leader is they try new things. They push everyone to do better, sometimes at the sacrifice of themselves. But if you're not training, you're falling behind. And never let training be the cause of your demise. And it doesn't matter who it's with, but you're either growing or you're declining. There's no way you're staying still for long.
Mark, as always, such a pleasure to have you on. I love to continue our conversations. In closing of this particular conversation, could you share some final thoughts with us, with me and audience?
Yeah, if you're listening and watching this, thank you for coming, because you really could be spending your time doing anything else. And you're here listening to us or watching and listening, and we appreciate it. And Adrian and I and everyone else, it is our sincerest goal to make a difference in this industry. And sometimes it's a good conversation. Sometimes it's a tough one. Sometimes it's a little like medicine where it doesn't taste very good, but it'll help you get better. But what I want you to do, and I'm asking you this, I'd like you to be able to comment to us in the future, is try new things and try different ideas, because normally when you make a change, it goes through this process, which is resistance, ridicule, and then acceptance. And so when you make a change, most people are going to resist. Then when they start making fun of it and giving you a hard time about it, you're making progress. And then it becomes a generally accepted practice and a standard. but don't perpetuate behaviors just because that's the way it's been, because you're either going to follow the pack or you're going to lead it. And I would like you to lead it and to make a difference, because when you create a good culture in your group, it creates this gravity in the workforce and people will just start coming to you, but you have to be consistent with it. So for all of you that are working hard and doing your best, we appreciate you. And trust me, guys like me and Adrian, we notice and we tell people. And whenever we get a chance, we try to match people up to where they would best fit and benefit everybody. So we just appreciate your time. And those are my closing thoughts. So thank you for spending a little bit over an hour with us.
Mark, I want to give you the opportunity for a plug for your business, for your personal contact. Just how can potential clients get a hold of you? How can our audience get a hold of you if they have a personal question, something, some ways to get in touch with you?
Sure. So my website is service team, like service team, serviceteamtraining.com. And you can contact me through there. And my phone number's on there, my email. I've also got some video content libraries coming out with Grow Learning, and I'm really excited to put a learning library out. Technical content, troubleshooting, 2 minutes, 30 minutes, long courses, weekly safety meetings. But at any time, if you think of something like, I would like a checklist on the tools and equipment that technicians should have and companies should provide, how to make service requests easy, we have a ton of information, and it's free, right? Except for the learning libraries. But go to serviceteamtraining.com, contact me. It's my pleasure to talk with you, email you, help in any way I can. And thank you for the plug. I appreciate that.
Of course, anytime. Thank you again, Mark, for being here with us for a little over an hour. I hope to get you back here soon. I hope that we make this an ongoing conversation, because it's not enough of this in this space. And for those of you watching us today, this was episode number 2 of the Multifamily X podcast series powered by AppWork, the series called Masters of Multifamily Maintenance Conversations. We thank you very much again. We really appreciate you being here for an hour out of your busy day, and we hope to see you back here soon. Have a great day.
Take care.